Hello everybody. Today we'll start a part of your cardiovascular system, which is the blood vessels. As you know that blood vessels include three types of blood vessels: the arteries, the veins, and the capillaries. So in today's lecture, first I will talk about the arterial system, which consists of the arteries in your body. There are three different types of arteries present in the body or in the circulatory system. We'll talk about those three types of arteries. Then we'll talk about the veins, different types of veins present in the circulatory system. Then we'll talk about the arterial wall, the layers in the wall of an artery. There are three layers in the wall, and different arteries have different thickness and different types of tissues in the wall. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about the capillary. Capillary form the capillary bed, and capillary bed is located between the arterial system and the venous system. That means where the artery ends, the capillary system starts, and then from the end of the capillary, the venous system starts. So we'll talk about the capillaries, capillary wall, and the functions of the capillary. We'll talk about the differences between an artery and a vein. Then we'll talk about different types of circulation. Two major types of circulations are systemic and pulmonary circulations. We'll talk about the differences between these two types of major circulations. Then we'll talk about the important arteries and veins in the body. We'll try to identify the important arteries and veins and their locations in the body. So first, you know that cardiovascular system consists of a heart, which is cardio. Vascular indicates the blood vessels, right? So blood vessels are three types, as I already mentioned: arteries, veins, and in between the arteries and veins you have the capillaries. Okay, so if the arteries, veins, and capillaries, this is the heart, and the blood from the heart enters into the large arteries first, right? And the arteries, large arteries, take the blood out from the heart when the heart pumps the blood, and then the large arteries give branches to form the smaller arteries, and then from the smaller arteries further smaller arteries arise, right? So branches again and again, and as those arteries divide, the branches get smaller and smaller, like the branches of the tree. So you see here, arteries always take the blood away from the heart, right? And larger arteries give blood to the smaller arteries, that means to their branches. Okay, and then the smallest arteries, those are called the arterioles, form the capillaries. So these are the capillaries, and capillaries form network, and that is called the capillary bed. So you see, from the end of the arterioles, the capillaries arise, and the capillaries, they get connected to each other to form the beds. So these are the capillary beds. Okay, and then from the other side of the capillary bed, the venous system starts. The smallest veins take the blood from the capillary bed and give the blood to the larger veins. So make sense? So this is a vein. Okay, so this is a small vein. Small vein receives blood from the capillary bed and gives the blood to the larger vein, and then the large veins bring the blood back into the heart. Okay, so that is how the arteries, capillaries and veins are present in the body. So the blood from the capillary bed enters into the venous system, and the veins bring the blood towards the heart, into the heart. Okay, so the smaller veins give blood to the larger veins, and larger veins move the blood towards the heart, and the largest veins, superior inferior vena cava, give the blood to the heart. Okay, so in systemic circulation, if you see, this is the heart. It has 4 chambers. This is the left ventricle. You have the oxygenated blood here. So from here the blood will enter into the arterial system. Okay, and then in the capillaries, gas exchange and exchange of other chemicals like nutrients take place between the blood and the tissue around. So through the wall of the capillaries, what happens? Exchange of gas and nutrients and other chemicals take place. Okay, metabolic toxics too. So the capillary wall is very thin, so through the wall, exchange of those chemicals can take place easily. Makes sense? The gases, nutrients and metabolic wastes. So that's how the circulatory system is in your body. Okay, now two major circulatory systems in the human body. One is called the pulmonary circuit or circulation, another is called the systemic circuit or circulation, same thing. Okay, now there are two more circulations are also present in the human body. What are those other two circulatory systems? One is called the hepatoportal circulation between the liver and your gastrointestinal tract, and another is called the fetal circulation. So if I want to mention the circulatory systems present in your body, we can first divide into adult circulation and fetal circulation. Adult circulation, that means in the adult body we have systemic. This is the largest circulatory system between the heart and the body, heart and the entire body. Okay, and then pulmonary circulation. Pulmonary means lung, right? So pulmonary between the heart and two lungs. So heart and your lungs. And there is another circulation in the adult body, that is the portal circulation or hepatic portal circulation. Hepatic portal between your GI tract or gastrointestinal tract and the liver. So nutrients are taken from the GI tract to the liver by this circulation. Okay, that means the nutrients from the food you eat are absorbed in the GI tract, and the blood takes the nutrients to the liver for the first processing of the nutrients. And fetal circulation is only in the fetus, which is between the mother's circulatory system and the fetus circulatory system. Okay, and as I mentioned, these two are the major circulatory systems in the body. You can see here pulmonary and systemic. So again, pulmonary is between the heart and your two lungs, right? And systemic is between the heart and the entire body. So this one is the largest, because from the heart the blood goes to the whole body. So this circulatory system is vast, much bigger than between the heart and the lungs, because you know that this is your heart and your lungs are just located next to your heart, right? So both sides of your heart. So between the heart and lung, you see the distance is not too far, right? Pretty close. So this circulation between the heart and two lungs, this is the pulmonary, and it is a short circuit circulation. However, from the heart to your entire body, if you just think the whole body, your head, neck, trunk, right, and other parts of your body, everywhere the blood goes, that is the uh, systemic circulation. From your head to all the way toe, blood should circulate everywhere. So that systemic circulation is large circuit. So this is a short circuit system, and systemic is a large circuit system. Make sense? Now you just think that to send the blood from the heart to the lungs, you need relatively weak pressure or a smaller pressure than to send the blood from the heart to the entire body. So the pulmonary circulation is a low pressure, because to send the blood from the heart to the lung, you need less pressure than from the heart to the body. So pulmonary circuit is not only short circuit, it is a low pressure circuit, a low pressure system. However, systemic circulation is a high pressure system. High pressure system. Make sense? And now, what type of blood is taken out from the heart in pulmonary circulation? Blood goes from the heart to the lungs, right? So blood sends blood. Why the heart sends blood to the lungs? We all know that, right? Blood goes from the heart to the lungs to get the oxygen. So deoxygenated blood is sent to the lungs. So in pulmonary circulation, arteries that take the blood out from the heart to the lung carry deoxygenated blood to the lung. And in case of systemic circulation, the arteries that take the blood out to the body, from the heart blood goes to the body to give oxygen, not to get oxygen. So opposite, right? So in case of systemic circulation, arteries carry oxygenated blood to the body, from the heart to the body. So in pulmonary, CO2 rich blood, that means deoxygenated blood, is taken to the lungs by the arterial system, right? And in case of systemic circulation, oxygenated blood or oxygen rich blood goes to the body. so opposite, right, to the body. So in pulmonary, deoxygenated goes to the lung. In systemic, oxygenated goes to the body. And those are the important differences between the pulmonary and systemic circulation, those two circulations. Okay, now if you see the pulmonary and systemic circulation in this picture, again remember this is the heart, and from the heart, blue blood here is showing the deoxygenated blood, and red blood is showing the oxygenated blood. So one thing you must remember, that left side of your heart contains oxygen rich blood, okay, and the right side of your heart contains CO2 rich blood, that means deoxygenated blood. So that's why you see here, this is the right side showing blue, and the left side is showing red. Okay, now you already know that the deoxygenated blood is sent to the lungs. This is your left lung, this is your right lung. Okay, so from which side the blood should go to the lung? From the right side of your heart, because right side contains CO2 rich blood, right, deoxygenated blood. So you can see here the blood is going to the lungs from the right side, you see here, and getting oxygen and become the oxygenated blood. You see the deoxygenated blood enters into the lung and then becomes oxygen rich, oxygenated blood, and returns to the heart. Now you already know that left side contains O2 rich blood. So O2 rich blood from the lung should return to the left side, not to the right side, because left side contains oxygen rich or oxygenated blood. Make sense? So that is the pulmonary circulation. Now let's see the systemic. You see here, we know that in systemic circulation, oxygenated blood goes from the heart to the body. So definitely blood should go from the left side that contains the oxygen rich blood to the body, right? So you see the red blood here from the left side enters into the aorta and goes to the upper part of the body through this long aorta, goes to the lower part of the body, and then gives the oxygen to the tissue. So when the oxygen leaves from the blood and carbon dioxide enters into the blood from the body, the blood loses oxygen but receives carbon dioxide, right? So blood will become deoxygenated blue, and that blood should return to the heart, but to in which side it should return? In the right side, because we already know right side contains deoxygenated blood, right? So you can see here from the upper part of the body, deoxygenated returns here from the lower side here, so in the right atrium, right side. So that is the systemic circulation. Okay, if you know another important thing, that would be helpful too. So this is your heart. Just remember a couple of things that would be very helpful. So 4 chambers. This is the left ventricle, this is the left atrium, right? And you already know that left side contains oxygen rich blood. Okay, and this is the right ventricle, and right atrium contains deoxygenated blood. We already know that, right, from here. And remember that atrium, both right and left, receive the blood from outside. And after receiving the blood, both right and left atrium receive the blood from outside and gives the blood to the same side's ventricle. So that is the function of the atrium. Atrium does what? Receive from outside, blood from outside of the heart, and gives to the same side's ventricle. Make sense? So just remember that. So blood will come this way and this way into the right atrium and left atrium. Now you already know right atrium contains deoxygenated. So deoxygenated blood will enter into the right atrium, and from here it will go to the right ventricle. Make sense? And oxygenated blood comes into the left atrium, and from the left atrium O2 rich blood goes to the left ventricle. Make sense? And ventricles do what? Ventricles send the blood to the outside. So left ventricle has O2 rich blood, so this blood should go to the body because oxygen rich blood should go to the body, right? So aorta will take the blood to the body. And right ventricle now has carbon dioxide rich blood, right? So that blood should go where to get the oxygen? To the lung. So from here the blood will go to the lung, right and left lungs, and from the left oxygen rich blood should go to the body. Make sense? So that's how the chambers work. So if you just remember a couple of things, one is left side contains O2 rich blood, right side CO2 rich blood, and atrium receives the blood and give to the same side's ventricle, right? So ventricles receive the blood from the atrium, and then ventricles send the blood to the outside. So from the left ventricle blood should go to the body because oxygen rich blood gets out, and from the right ventricle blood should go to the lungs because CO2 rich blood gets out from the right ventricle. So if I ask you which chambers should pump the blood more forcefully, the ventricles, because ventricles send the blood to the outside, right? If I ask you which ventricle should pump more forcefully, right or left? Left one, because it is systemic circulation going to the body, and from right ventricle the blood is going to the lung. That's why left ventricular wall is very thick. Okay, now if you see the structure of the wall of an artery, as I mentioned, there are three layers in the arterial wall. The outermost layer is called the tunica externa. Externa means outside. So this is the tunica externa. It is mainly connective tissue layer. Okay, and then middle layer is the tunica media, this red part, muscular layer formed by smooth muscle. Okay, and then innermost layer is the tunica intima. Okay, intima, inside this part, and in tunica intima you have the innermost thin endothelium. It is a simple squamous epithelial layer. So the endothelium is the innermost thin layer of tunica intima. Okay, now in the tunica media and tunica intima, if you look carefully you will find some elastic fibers. You see here, elastic fibers are shown by these blue lines. So this is the middle layer, smooth muscle layer. However, there are some elastic fibers there, and the elastic fibers give the elasticity to the wall, so the artery can expand. When the pressure increases, the artery can expand because of its elasticity given by the elastic fibers, and when the pressure is low, it will squeeze. That will maintain the pressure inside the arteries. Now if the types of arteries, you remember I mentioned there are three types of arteries. The largest arteries are called the elastic arteries. So these are the large arteries. That means those arteries are close to your heart and take the blood out from the heart. Those are the large arteries, right? Like aorta and its branches, large branches. Okay, so these are the large arteries. And then you have the branches, right? Smaller branches from the large arteries, and these are called the distributing arteries. So first, the large arteries are called what? The elastic arteries. Elastic arteries also known as are also known as conducting arteries, and they take the blood out from the heart to give to the muscular arteries or distributing arteries. So these are the muscular or distributing arteries. Take the blood to your different body parts or organs. Okay, and then the smallest arteries are called the arterioles. I showed you at the very beginning of my talk, and then from the arterioles you get the capillary beds. Remember that? So the smallest arteries are the arterioles, right? So elastic are the large arteries, also known as conducting. And why large arteries are called elastic arteries? Because in the wall, you remember, in the smooth muscle, elastic fibers are present. In elastic arteries, you have more elastic fibers. Why we need more elastic fibers in these large arteries? Because when the heart pumps, blood very forcefully enters into these large arteries. So large arteries should expand a lot. Makes sense? And that is helped by the elastic fibers. That's why these arteries have more elasticity, and these are called the elastic or conducting arteries. Then these elastic or conducting arteries give blood to their branches, and those branches take the blood to the muscles, to the organs, body parts. Those are called the conducting or distributing arteries. And then you have the smallest arteries. Those are called the arterioles, and arterioles then form the capillaries to form the capillary beds. Okay, so those are three types of arteries. And then if you see the veins, the smallest veins are called the venules. They collect the blood from the capillaries. You remember I mentioned that where the capillaries end, the venous system starts, right? So small, very small veins receive the blood from the capillary beds and give to the larger veins, and then further larger veins bring the blood back into the heart. So if you see the veins, venules are the smallest veins, then you have the small veins, then medium sized veins, and the large veins. Okay, In the large veins, you have all those three layers that you saw in the arterial wall: tunica externa, tunica media, and tunica intima. Okay. Now, if you see here, first let's see the wall of the elastic artery. You can see here the elastic tissue is more in the elastic arteries. Okay, and the elastic membrane is thick here, so more elasticity is in the elastic arteries. And in tunica media, you have less muscles. You see, this muscular layer is not too thick if you compared with the muscular or distributing arteries. This is called the muscular artery. That means middle tunica media or muscular layer, smooth muscle layer, is pretty thick, even thicker than the large arteries here. You see the red middle layer is thicker here, right? That's why it is called the muscular. But here the elastic tissue is more in elastic arteries. So in elastic arteries, more elastic fibers, more or elastic tissue, but less muscle tissue, smooth muscle. But here you have more smooth muscle tissue than the elastic, less elastic. Okay, and the arterioles are the smallest, and you see here it doesn't have all those layers. You have smooth muscle cell layer and the endothelium, so the wall is very thin. And if you see the veins, one important difference here, you can clearly see that the muscular layer, the red middle tunica media, smooth muscle layer, is much thinner than the arterial smooth muscle layer or tunica media. And the lumen, the diameter of the opening or size of the lumen, is bigger in the vein than the arteries. Why? Because if you see the total thickness of the wall, it is much less than the arterial wall, because the middle muscular layer is very thin here, you can see, right? So since the vein has thin wall, the lumen inside is bigger. Since the artery has, you can see here, this is bigger, this is narrow, smaller, right? Because of this thick layer. So if I ask you, tell me a few differences between an artery and a vein, you can tell that pressure inside the artery is more, because arteries first receive the blood, right, from the heart. Then the blood passes through all the arterial system and then enters into the capillary beds, where blood gets slow and then enters into the venous system. So inside the vein, when the blood enters into the vein, blood is already slow, so the pressure is less. Make sense? So the pressure in arterial system or inside the artery is high than the vein, right? Pressure is high or more. Here pressure is low, right? The wall of the artery is thick than the vein, thin. Since the wall is thick, the lumen is small. The size of the lumen is small or smaller. Here larger, right? And You can also say that the arteries take the blood away from the heart always. It doesn't matter what kind of blood. You know, in systemic, oxygenated blood is taken out. In pulmonary, deoxygenated blood is taken out to the lung. So uh, uh, we don't care what type of blood is getting out. The definition of an artery is the blood vessel that takes the blood away from the heart. It could be oxygenated or deoxygenated, so away from the heart. And veins always bring the blood towards the heart, move the blood towards the heart. In systemic, veins bring deoxygenated blood. In pulmonary, veins bring oxygenated blood into the heart. Okay. And inside the veins, especially inside the large veins, you have valves. But inside the arteries, you have no valves. Since inside the veins the blood gets slow, so the valves are very useful. So the blood will not try to get further slow. It will move only towards the heart in one direction. So these valves will only open towards the heart to let the blood go towards the heart, not come back. Okay. Okay, now the capillaries. Capillaries are the smallest blood vessels, and the wall of the capillary is extremely thin, that I mentioned before. It is very thin, so that the chemicals like gases, nutrients, metabolic wastes, other chemicals can easily pass through it. From the blood, you know that if you see a capillary bed, so this is the arterial, smallest artery, and it branches to form the capillaries. So these are the capillaries, and the capillaries make beds, get connected to each other to form the capillary beds. So this is the capillary bed, and the other side you have what? The venule, smallest vein. So blood from the arteriole enters into the capillary bed, and the wall of the capillaries is very thin. So here you have the tissue, the cells. Cells need what? Oxygen from the blood, right? So O2 will get out from the blood to enter into the cells, to the tissue, and tissue produces carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide will move to the opposite direction, that means from the tissue to the blood, right, through the wall of the capillary. Tissue also produces metabolic, toxic, or wastes. Those should enter into the blood and to be taken to the kidneys, right? So from the tissue, carbon dioxide and metabolic wastes, that means all those are toxic chemicals, enter into the blood, and blood becomes deoxygenated, and blood gives carbon dioxide and nutrients. Those should be given to the tissue, right? So good stuffs get out from the blood to enter into the tissue, and bad stuffs from the tissue to the blood. Now this blood has more carbon dioxide and other toxic chemicals, and the blood is taken towards the heart by the venous system, right? So this one has more O2 and nutrients, that means good stuffs to give to the tissue, and this one has carbon dioxide and metabolic wastes to take to the heart and to the kidneys. Okay, so now you know that the wall of the capillary is very thin. The lumen is also very narrow, that means the opening is very narrow. And in the wall of the capillary, we do not see the tunica media, that is smooth muscle layer, or tunica externa. Only tunica intima, which is the innermost layer of the artery or vein. Remember that? So very thin. And the average diameter of the lumen is very narrow, um, about 8 micrometer. That means almost the same size of a red blood cell. So only a single red blood cell can pass through the capillary at a time. Okay. The capillaries are 3 different types. Major capillaries in your body are classified into 3 types: continuous capillaries, fenestrated capillaries, and sinusoidal capillaries. Continuous capillaries have the smallest pores, that means the pores or holes through which the chemicals will pass. Um, the holes are very narrow or small. Fenestrated capillaries have fenestrations, that means larger pores, and sinusoidal capillaries have the largest sized openings or pores. So the sinusoidal capillaries are the most porous capillaries, and least porous are the continuous capillaries. Makes sense? And in between you have the fenestrated capillaries. So depending on the area, what kind of function we need, the capillaries are, that kind of capillaries are present there. Continuous capillaries, through the wall of the continuous capillaries, only diffusion of water, small solutes, and lipid soluble materials can pass, because I mentioned that if you see the holes or pores in the wall, these are tiny holes, very small, because there are many tight junctions there. So we would only allow very small molecules, solutes, and water molecules, and some lipid soluble materials. Okay. Blood cells or plasma, proteins, they cannot get out from the blood through the wall of the continuous capillaries. Least porous, highly selective. Make sense? Okay, because in the wall you have more endothelial tight junctions. Okay. Now the continuous capillaries are found in the muscles, skin, brain. Now remember, capillary wall has pores, and continuous capillaries have smallest pores, so least permeable, and they are present in these organs. However, the continuous capillaries in the brain is different than the continuous capillaries in the muscles and the skins. Brain is highly sensitive organ, right? The brain tissue is very sensitive. So the continuous capillaries in the brain form the blood-brain barrier. That means you have the brain tissue here and blood inside the capillary, and these pores are highly selective, because brain tissue is highly sensitive, right? And that's why this is called the blood-brain barrier. You have blood inside the capillary here and brain tissue here, right? And this layer is very selectively permeable, called the blood-brain barrier. You know, you take so many different foods, chemicals, drugs, medicines all the time. Now if you take a medicine for your liver or kidney and that goes to the brain, that can cause harm to the brain, right? So the wall of this continuous capillary should be more selective, should not allow many chemicals pass through it. Only those are needed for the brain will be able to pass. Fenestrated. Fenestration means slits, windows. So if you see the fenestrated capillary wall, you will see pores uh, penetrating the endothelial lining, and the pores are the fenestrations, and larger solutes as well as water can pass through the fenestrated capillary wall. Okay, where you will find the fenestrated capillaries, where filtration, absorption and secretion, these functions take place. Through the wall of the fenestrated capillaries, filtration can occur, absorption can occur, and secretion. Now we know that filtration takes place in the kidneys. So kidneys have fenestrated capillaries. Make sense? By filtration, kidneys produce urine. We know that. Absorption, where? Intestine. Right? So in the intestinal wall, you have fenestrated capillaries. Secretion from the glands. We know that, right? So in the glands, you have the fenestrated capillaries. So if you just remember these functions and where these functions take place, you basically know filtration in the kidneys to produce urine, absorption in the intestinal wall to absorb the nutrients and waters and other minerals, secretion in the glands, right? And you see here choroid plexus of brain. This is not the whole brain. Only in the brain there is a plexus that is called the choroid plexus that causes secretion. So this is different than the other brain parts. Okay, so now if you see the wall of a continuous capillary here, you see very least permeable. Only you see here little bit channel. So very, you see here the line here. So water molecule and very small solutes can pass through these channels or tiny pores. Okay, so uh, so only allows very small molecules. Now here you see the fenestrated capillary. You can see many pores, right? You see many pores. So filtration, secretion, absorption can occur easily through the wall. And here if you just take a chunk piece and see, you see here this is the pore or channel. If you see the wall of the fenestrated, you see many pores. You see here particularly, you see there. So the solutes can get out more easily. Sinusoidal capillaries have the largest pores, and the pores are so big that even a red blood cell can get out, okay, or get in, so can pass through. So the sinusoidal capillaries permit a lot of water, large solutes like protein molecules, those are large, and even blood cells. Okay, and where you will find the sinusoidal capillaries? In the liver, bone marrow, spleen, and many endocrine glands. Especially, in the liver, bone marrow, spleen, you will learn in NP2 that liver and spleen, these are the organs where the red blood cells enter before they are destroyed. So the blood takes the blood cells to the liver, to the spleen, okay, and inside the liver and the spleen, you have the fenestrated capillaries. Now just think that if this is a liver or a spleen, blood will enter into the fenestrated capillaries here, and since the wall has large pores, the red blood cells can get out and will be destroyed inside the spleen and liver. Why bone marrow? You all know that inside the bone marrow, the blood cells are produced, right, in the bone marrow. So sinusoidal capillaries are present in the bone marrow. So new blood cell from the bone marrow can easily enter into the blood vessels, blood circulation, and will be taken out from the bone marrow. Make sense? So that's why these organs have the sinusoidal capillaries. So the red blood cells can easily get out or in. New red blood cells from the bone marrow will get in to the capillaries, and old blood cells can also get out to be destroyed. Okay, we'll talk about the capillary bed. As I mentioned that the capillaries get interconnected to form network, and that network is the capillary bed, right? And the capillaries are located, or beds are located between the arterioles and the venules. I showed you that before, right? And exchange of chemicals take place through the wall of the capillaries, because it is the wall is very thin. Only the innermost layer, tunica intima, is present in the capillary wall, not the media, not the external. Okay. Now, in the capillary bed, you will see met arterioles. Those are also called precapillary arterioles. This initial segment of the connection, and then thoroughfare channels. So thoroughfare channels are most direct passageway through the capillary bed, and precapillary sphincters to regulate how much blood will enter into the capillary bed. So sphincters are like the gates. So let's see. So you see here, this is the arterial, okay, and this is the venule. So blood from the arterial enters into the capillary, and this capillary is called the met arterial. So first, met arterial receives the blood from the arterial, and then from the met arterial, some blood, without going through the capillary bed, this is the capillary bed interconnection, you see here, interconnected capillaries. So these are the capillary beds. Some blood, you see, after it enters into the met arterial here, will directly go through thoroughfare channel to the venule without entering into the capillary bed. But some blood will enter into the capillary bed, right? And after the blood enters into the capillary bed, exchange of chemicals will take place. Now this is oxygenated blood first enters into the capillary bed, right? So oxygen will get out from the blood to enter into the tissue. However, you know that carbon dioxide will go from the tissue to the blood. So blood will gradually lose its oxygen and gain or get carbon dioxide from the tissue, and will become CO2 rich blood. That means bluish colored blood here. So more carbon dioxide, and that will enter into the venules, smallest veins, and then to the larger veins and further. Okay, so that's how the blood circulates in the capillary. Now here, if you see carefully, you see when the blood enters from the arterial into the capillary bed, in this area you see smooth muscle tissue structure. You see the smooth muscle fibers. These are the sphincters, pre-capillary. That means before the blood enters into the capillary bed, the sphincters are there. So how much blood will enter into the capillary bed, that is controlled by the sphincters here, and how much blood will return into the venous side, that is also controlled by the sphincters. So from the arterial, when the blood enters into the capillary bed, that is controlled by the sphincters. Also from the capillary bed, how much blood will return into thoroughfare channel, that is also controlled by the sphincters. So sphincters are basically control how much blood will flow in the capillary bed. You know, in some condition, more blood flows in your tissue. For example, in your muscle, when you do exercise, the sphincters should get more relaxed, open. So more blood will enter into your capillaries, right, to give more oxygen to the tissues, because during the exercise your tissue muscles need more oxygen. Make sense? But in resting condition, the sphincters will be somewhat constricted, and in cold weather it will also be constricted. So how much blood is located, total volume of blood distribution, how much blood is located in your arterial system and in your venous system, right? So uneven distribution among the arteries, veins and capillaries, not same amount in these three systems, right? In systemic circulation, the venous system contains about 64% of total blood volume. If your total blood volume is 5 liter, 64% of it, right? That means about 3/5 part of your blood. So 3.5 liter is present in the venous system. You remember the veins, the lumens are bigger, so can accommodate more blood. Okay, and of that, about 1 liter is in the venous networks in the liver, bone marrow and skin. So a lot of blood in the veins in your liver, bone marrow and skin. Inside the arteries, in systemic circulation, that means inside the arterial system, contains only 13% of your total blood volume. That means a very small amount in the arterial system, inside the arteries. Okay, about 1/5 of your venous blood, the volume. Okay, the remaining blood is located inside the capillaries. Inside the heart, always some blood remains, and the pulmonary circuit. So you see here the distribution. The venous system has the highest volume of blood, 64, more than half, right, in the veins. And in the arterial, systemic arterial circulation, only 13%. And inside the heart, 7%. Pulmonary circulation, that means the circulation between the heart and the lungs, 9%, and capillaries, 7%. Okay, so let's stop here, and we'll start from the next slide in my next lecture. We'll talk about the important blood vessels in the body. That means important arteries and veins we'll identify in the body.